All right, so we were doing DFT. I'll just quickly start from where we were. So discrete Fourier transform. All right, so in the last class, what we had done was that if you have suppose a sequence which is xn, this is a finite sequence, then there are two possible transforms that you can take of it. It's a discrete time signal. It's a discrete time signal. So you can take a Z transform, and you can take a discrete time Fourier transform. Now the problem with both these transforms is that both the transforms computationally or I should say numerically incompatible. The reason is that in both of them omega takes infinite values and second is that there are infinite sums. So for these two reasons, on a computer, they can't be used. So we had to look for some ways in which we can store the transforms of a discrete time signal, and therefore we came to another kind of a transform which we called as a DFT transform, which we denote by capital XK, and this is basically a finite transform. So the idea is this, that if endpoint sequence is denoted by xn, then DFT produces endpoint transform capital XK. So because it is finite XK, it can be stored in a computer, and we'll see how this worked. And I told you that the discrete time Fourier transform of xn was e to the power j omega, and then from minus infinity to plus infinity xn e to the power minus j omega. So you can clearly see that it is a function of omega, and omega is continuous, and you have infinite number of sums. That's why DDFT is not a good way to store the transforms on a computer, because it will require infinite sums at infinite frequencies, and we will not have that much amount of memory to store them. So from here we moved to what is called as the concept of frequency sampling. So frequency sampling means that we will sample x e to the power j omega at some instants. So we said let those instants be denoted by omega k, and let there be n such points. So because omega, the continuous variable omega, varies between 0 to 2 pi, this became 2 pi by n k. That means the single increment in frequency will be of 2 pi by n, and k is just an index increasing it every time, and this k we said would vary from 0 to basically n minus 1. So you'll have n number of increments over the interval of omega, which was 0. Okay, so because we start from 0 and then we'll end up at 2 pi, and there'll be n number of intervals between them. So this is what frequency sampling was all about, and that meant that e to the power j omega, I'm writing again, became n minus infinity to plus infinity xn e to the power minus j omega n. So here, instead of omega, if I substitute j omega n, it becomes n is equal to infinity to minus infinity to plus infinity xn e to the power minus j 2 pi k n by capital N, right? So now, but then the question came that if you look at this expression, is this DFT? Then what I said was that this is still not something that we can constitute as DFT, because you have an infinite sum here. And I told you, if you look at this definition here, that an n-point sequence denoted by xn will have a DFT, which will be denoted by capital Xk, and it will also have an n-point sequence. It will be an n-point sequence. But here you don't have an n-point sequence. You have this sum going to infinity, starting from, say, infinity, it is going to infinity on the other direction. This is not DFT. But we will probably look into some of the properties of this function and try to evaluate what DFT is all about. That is the purpose of today's class. So till this fourth slide, I have just revised what we had done, and we'll move forward from here. Okay, so if you look at this function, which is n is equal to minus infinity to plus infinity minus j 2 pi n k by n. If you look at this function, then this function is periodic in both n and k with a period of capital N. So I can say that this is periodic with the period of capital N. If you put n and if you replace n by n plus capital N, you will get the same expression, but you'll have something over here. So this is basically what I'm talking about, is periodicity in k. That is in k. It's periodic in k, which means that if you replace k by k plus n, you will get the same sequence back. Let's try to, we know that our window in which we are working is of n units. N units is the window in which you are working. So let me just try to rewrite this expression as follows. Let me say that I expand this sequence. I write it like this. I say, let this be n equal to 0 to n minus 1 xn e to the power minus j 2 pi nk by capital N. Since we are working in the windows of n units, I'm going to decompose this sum into sections of n chunks. So this is the first chunk where n starts from 0 and goes to n minus 1 plus. Then the next can be where n starts from capital N and goes to 2n minus 1, and you have the entire term here. This entire term is here, so I cannot write it, so I'm writing a dot for this, and then plus it will extend. On the other side, let me just write it like this. I'll write summation. It has gone to 0. It started from 0, so it will go to minus 1, and it will start from n equal to minus n, something like this, and then you have plus dot dot dot. So basically what I have done is that I have decomposed the summation sign and written x e to the power j omega k in sums of n units, because we're talking of periodicity after n samples. So let me just rewrite it so that you have a better picture. I wrote it like this. I said let it be, let me just write all the three terms. Let me write n from minus n minus 1 xn e to the power minus j 2 pi nk divided by n, and on this side all the terms that will come. Then plus you have n equal to 0, because from minus 1k बाद n equal to 0 will be the term that will come, and this sum will go to n minus 1, and this will be xn e to the power minus n 2 pi nk over n, plus then the next sample point after n minus 1 is going to be n, and then it will go up to 2n minus 1, and this will be xn e to the power minus j 2 pi by n by capital N, and then plus all the terms. So what I'm doing is that I'm trying to write it in chunks of n terms, because we know that the periodicity in k is up to n samples. So let's just, even in small n, write them in terms of n samples. So this is how I write them. Now I can combine this into one compact representation, and I can write this as follows. I'll say there's an infinite sum over m from minus infinity to plus infinity, and a finite sum where n ranges from mn to mn plus n minus 1 xn e to the power minus j 2 pi nk divided by capital N. Now this is basically the previous sum. I have written it in a compact form, and you can check it. Now m values range from minus infinity to infinity. If you put m equal to 0, then here it becomes n equal to 0, and at the top it becomes n minus 1, this entire term, which corresponds to this term. If you put m equal to 1, then this becomes small n equals to capital N, and at the top it becomes 2n minus 1, which is basically this term. If you put m equal to minus 1, then this becomes small n equals to minus capital N, and this becomes at the top only -1, which is basically this term. And then you can change m becomes 2, so you'll get the next, it becomes 2 capital N, and this becomes 3n minus 1, and so on. You can develop all these terms. Now, so this is the compact way of writing basically this entire thing, or this entire sum. We can write it in a compact way like this, in which we have denoted this sum as a sequence of n sample points, this sum. Okay, so now there are two summations, one is in m and one is in n, so we can interchange them. And what we can do is that we can write it as n is equal to capital M n to n plus n minus 1 summation m equal to minus infinity to plus infinity xn e to the power minus jn. This. Now I have a question for one of you, and I'll ask, I need to transform this outer summation into a summation that starts from 0 to n minus 1. What transformation should I apply on small n? That is the question. I need to change this summation, the one that I have just marked, starting from 0 to n minus 1. What transformation should I apply on small n? Let me ask somebody. Ishan, can you tell me? Oh, there are not many people. Ishan, you can't use your mic. Okay. Samtha, can you tell me? How is it? How is it
No, sir.
that you can? No? Think about it. What I want is that I want this, because see, the thing is that DFT is going to be a finite sequence which will start from 0 and it will go to n minus 1. So I want this term to vary from 0 to n minus 1. What sequence? If anybody can tell me, it's an open question now. What do you think should be done?
Sir, we can take a summation from 0 to n minus 1, but for every term we can add m
No,
n.
I mean, no. The thing is this, that if you
Small
look at
n
it,
minus
I mean,
mn.
small
N is equal
n minus, yeah,
mn.
exactly. So something like this. So let me just say that n is equal to some r plus mn. So I'm just transforming small n into some other dummy variable which is r. So now if you look at it, if small n reaches m capital N, then r tends to 0. If n is mn, this means that r is equal to 0, because you can just simply substitute it and you'll get r equal to 0. If n is m times capital M plus n minus 1, then r becomes equal to n minus 1. So this is how we transform this, and once we transform this, what we get is, we can write this e to the power j omega q as summation r equal to 0 to n minus 1, m equal to minus infinity to plus infinity, x. Now n was substituted, so this becomes r plus m capital N e to the power minus j I think there was something that I was doing wrong. Yeah, okay, fair enough. So this becomes 2 pi k over n. We'll just wait for 1 second. I think I'm just getting some problem in my device. Let me just check it once. Just hold on. We'll take a small break of like 2 minutes and I'll be back. Just excuse me for like 2 minutes. Yeah, so let's start. Yeah. So here, so you had an n here. So this becomes. Let me just rewrite it again. Just sorry. I just need a little bit of space. So this becomes r equal to 0 to n minus 1, m from minus infinity to plus infinity, xr plus mn e to the power minus j 2 pi k by capital N. And here also, because there was a small n, this becomes n plus mn. Okay. Now let's take care of the exponential term first. So this becomes r is equal to 0 to n minus 1. You'll see that this would automatically become periodic in r. So this becomes m minus infinity to plus infinity xr plus mn e to the power minus j 2 pi kr over capital N multiplied by e to the power minus j 2 pi k. Capital N and capital N gets cancelled and there is m. Now k is an integer, m is an integer. That means this term over here is going to be 1. So it'll just go away. So I'm not writing it now. So basically, just to explain you that it is 1, I'm just removing it. And I'm just not going to write another step. But this is basically what e to the power j omega k capital X is. Now, r is simply a dummy variable. So what I do is that instead of r, I just write n again, because that's what we are generally used to seeing. So this becomes n is equal to 0 to n minus 1. N is equal to minus infinity to plus infinity xn plus capital Mn e to the power minus j 2 pi k n over n. Now, I can write it like this. So e to the power omega k becomes n is equal to 0 to n minus 1. I write xpn e to the power minus j 2 pi k n over capital N, where xpn is simply m equal to minus infinity to plus infinity x n plus n. Now you can see something very interesting. The interesting bit is as follows. Now, if you look at this expression that I've written over here, this is not an infinite sum. This is a finite sum because it starts from n equal to 0 to n minus 1. If you look at its earlier definition, which I had given over here in the beginning, Then I said that so over here the sum was from n equal to minus infinity to infinity for xn. This, by all manipulations that we have done, we get an expression from n equal to 0 to n minus 1. The exponential term remains the same. The signal which was inside, which was xn, gets replaced by a signal which is xp. And we get what we call as a finite sum. So the first thing is that we got a finite sum. But now, instead of xn inside, we have a signal which is x subscript pn. Let's just look at this signal a little more in depth and try to understand what it actually is. If you look at xp n, then it is simply shifted versions of xn, right? So this xpn can be written as, for m equal to 0, this is xn, because if you put m equal to 0, the inside argument becomes simply n. Plus, if you put m equal to 1, then this becomes n plus capital N, which is simply xn shifted to the left by capital N. Then if you put n equal to minus 1, then you get x and minus n. And then you can just do that and you will just get this. So what can you tell me about xpn? Can you tell me something about xpn? What kind of a nature xpn has?
So same signal shifted by n capital
Yeah,
N.
so basically I can say that xpn is a periodic signal now, because xpn is a signal that repeats itself after n samples. You get the same xn again. So it's basically, so if you look at xpn, then xpn is something like this. Suppose you have this entire chunk and you can call it xn. Then this entire chunk gets repeated again. And it goes on. Interestingly, whether one block sticks to another block is a matter of question. So this could be xpn, or you could have xpn like this also. And this should give you some intuitive idea about, this is something that you've seen happening in sampling, if you remember. Either when you sample a signal, either the frequency transforms were sticking close to each other, or they were far away from each other, or they were into each other like this. So, this was what you used to call the aliasing term, right? So these are three different possibilities of xpn. But basic idea is, what I'm trying to tell you is that, let me just add a few more slides. So let me just say that xpn is a repeated version of xn. It is periodic in capital N. Now, I have still not formally defined DFT, but we have actually come up with an expression for DFT, which would be something like this. But I have still not defined DFT. Right now, I'm trying to analyze this xpn, and I'm just saying that this xpn is actually a periodic representation of xn. It's xn repeated again on the left and right hand side. So xpn becomes periodic. So now my question is this. If you are given xpn, how is it that you can ensure that you can derive xn from it back again? How can you ensure that? How can you ensure that?
Sir, aliasing now ho to
Exactly. Yeah. So if you look at these three diagrams, you can see that if you are given a waveform of xpn, then you can derive xn from it if either this case exists or this case exists. But you cannot derive xn back if this case exists, which is much similar to what you used to study in sampling, where you used to study oversampling, Nyquist sampling, and undersampling. So this was oversampling. In this case, this was the Nyquist sampling, and this was the undersampling where there was aliasing and you could not derive it. So basically, if you're given xpn, the task is to get xn. How is this possible? And this is possible very simply. Suppose, let me say that xn has L samples. Then if the value of this capital N is greater than equal to L, you can recover the recovery of xn will be possible from xpn. This much is clear to you, I suppose. Basically what I'm trying to say is that if suppose you have an xn which is something like this, 1, 2, 3, it has 3 samples. Okay, so for this the value L is equal to 3. Now if you have a capital N, which was basically the number of points in a DFT, then if this n is greater than equal to 3, then what kind of a XP you will get? You will get an XP is what? XP is x n plus m times capital N, which is going to be x n plus m times 3. Let me just, let's just put it to be equal to 3 here. Not greater than 3 would be obvious, but let's put it equal to 3. So for m equal to 0, you will simply get back xn. So this contributes to n equal to 0. Sorry, m equal to 0 in xp. And this is your xn. For m equal to 1, xp becomes x n plus 3. So this entire thing, shifts to the left by 3. So that means -1, -2, -3. Right? So what will happen is that you will get a sequence which will be just like this. Over here you will get something like this for m equal to -1. So you can see that the unit entity xn is recovered or is preserved in xp. If n was 4, then you will have this sequence starting somewhere here. So if n was 4, you would get something like this. You'll go here, you'll go here, you'll go here. This will be left, you'll go here, here, and here. And in this case, 1 will be left and you'll go here, you'll go here, you'll go here. So this is for n equal to 3, this is for n equal to 4. So basically what I'm trying to say is that so long as the length of xn is less than the points that you are sampling your DTFT with, it is possible to get back xn from xp. So this is also clear. Now let's come and define formally what is actually happening. You had one xn. You took its transform and you got e to the power j. We could not use this because it implies infinite number of sums and infinite number of frequencies. And this was basically your DTFT. What you did was, if you sample DTFT, you got e to the power j omega k. This was the sampled version of DTFT. Now, when you actually sample in frequency domain, then obviously there has to be some effect of this sampling in the time domain. So what was that effect? That effect was that if you look at e to the power j omega, and we can write this as xn e to the power minus j 2 pi k n by capital N, and n begins from minus infinity to plus infinity. And please pay attention here, because this is probably the most important concept to understand DFT. So DTFT was given by this. Then once you sampled this, when you sampled this, you got e to the power j omega k. Obviously, these two things are not same. This is not same as this. That means there has to be fundamental change in the time domain also. And this became n equal to 0 to n minus 1. And this became xp, e to the power minus j 2 pi. So the effect of sampling in the frequency domain resulted in a change of xn to xpn in the time domain. So you required this signal, which was the discretized version of DTFT, so that you could store these values in a computer, because you can only store finite values in a computer. But that meant that once you do this, the signal that you had initially xn did not remain xn, it became xpn. Now the challenge was, is it possible to obtain xn back from xpn or not? Because if you cannot obtain xn back from xpn, then storing these values would not really mean anything to you, because the ultimate idea is to find some way in which we can store the frequency transform of xn in a computer. But we cannot store the frequency transform of xn in a computer, because this thing over here has infinite sums and infinite frequencies. So what we did was that we said, okay, let me not store capital X e to the power j omega. Let me store only few sample points of capital X e to the power j omega. So I was storing this. But when I evaluated this and I stored them in the computer, that fundamentally meant that I'm kind of storing in time domain a signal which was xpn, but not xn. So the important thing was, what is the condition in which I can recover xn from xpn? And that we have just seen. So the idea is like this. You had xn, you took a transform which was your DTFT, and you obtained e to the power j omega x e to the power j omega. You cannot use this on a computer. So what you did is that you sampled this. Once you sampled it, you got something like e to the power jk. But then that meant that this was equivalent to a signal xn, pn in the time domain. So if you will just look at this, then xn and xpn, at some level they should be equal, otherwise there is no point. But the idea is that what is the condition in which xpn can give you xn back? And that we have seen. We have said that if xn has a length of n samples, then if sampling is done with capital N samples, then xn can be recovered from xn, and that is basically what we wanted to achieve. And now I will define DFT. So we say that capital XK, which was a DFT, is basically e to the power j omega k from n equal to 0 to n minus 1 xpn e to the power minus j 2 pi kn over capital N, where xpn is nothing but xn in the interval n minus 1, provided capital N is greater than or equal to L, where L is the length of X. So therefore, we can write this as capital X K is summation n is equal to 0 to n minus 1 xn to the power minus j 2 per capital N. And here in this expression, okay, I used this slide, let me just, yeah. So xk is defined as n equal to 0, n minus 1, xn e to the power minus 2 pi kn over n, where small n varies from 0 to n minus 1 and k varies from 0 to n. Now, I have replaced xpn by xn because we are assuming that capital N is greater than capital N. Generally speaking, we generally take n equal to L. That is the case we take, so that we don't have to include another L into the equation. But the idea is that you must remember that if you have a xn, which is some number, then that number should fundamentally be smaller than the number of sample points you are taking to discretize the transform. Just, I'll ask you a very simple question. Suppose there is xn which has some values, it's a sequence, and L is 25. Now I say, let me find out a DFT which is 16-point DFT, which means that n is equal to 16. Now this, do you think that this definition will hold then? Do you think this definition will hold then? Yes or no?
No, sir.
It won't hold, because fundamentally DFT is this. This is DFT. But this DFT is of no use to us so long as this condition is not satisfied. It's just to say that you can evaluate DFT using any number of sample points given a certain xn. But you only want a DFT which is useful for you, because ultimately you should be able to recover the information of the original signal back. The original signal is not xpn, the original signal is xn. So only those xpn's are actually welcomed or valid that can give you back xn. But if suppose you have a sequence of xn which is 25 samples and you are sampling your frequency transform by using only 16 samples, then you will get a xp which will be x n plus m n. You will get some xp. You will be able to evaluate some xk. But that xk will have no meaning. It will not be useful to you because you can never recover xn back from xpn if this condition exists. So a meaningful DFT, we are looking for, when we say a DFT, we are not looking for just any DFT. We are looking for a meaningful DFT. We are looking for that DFT in which xpn can fundamentally give you back xn. I mean, you can always evaluate this thing. This is something that generally is not given in a lot of books. So what they do is they write xk if there is an endpoint DFT that has to be evaluated. Of course, that is this thing. This is basically how books will define a DFT. Okay, but that is just just a definition. You have not gone deep inside the the meaning of DFT. Actually, DFT is this. It is n minus 1 xpn e to the power minus j 2 pi kn. This is the basic definition. Now, this basic definition gives you this definition only when your capital N is greater than or equal to n. So that condition must be fundamentally established, and that condition must be holding true for you to actually have a DFT which is going to be of any use to you. So this is the useful DFT. This DFT is the useful DFT. At least this is the DFT that we want. But this is the general definition of DFT. This is the general definition of DFT. But this general definition of DFT may or may not be useful to us. It will be useful to us if we can generate xn from this xpn, and that can only happen when capital N is greater than capital N. So that is something that you must remember. So, this discussion leads us to an important result. It says that to store xn, basically, the thing is this. To store xn, one does not need entire information in the frequency domain. One only needs information at carefully selected sample points. In frequency. That is all you need. So it's saying like this. Suppose you have what is happening? Suppose you have a xn which is minus 1, 2, 3, 4. So that means that here, let me just say that L is 4. So if omega k, which is 2 pi by n into k, then the number of sample points that you require must have at least n equal to 4 or n greater than 4. If you're doing this and you are discretizing this domain of omega, which was 0 to 2 pi, into these points, then so long as capital N is 4 or it is greater than n equal to 4, whatever DFT you will evaluate is going to be meaningful, because using this DFT, you will be able to get back xn. If you take n equal to 3, if you take n equal to 3, then omega k will become 2 pi by 3 into k. You will be able to get some xk, but that means that this transformation of getting back xn from this is not going to be possible. Then there is no point of actually evaluating it. So this is, for discussion point of view, you must know how DFT comes. But when we will actually be studying DFT, we will assume, so from here on, we will assume that n greater than equal to L condition is always satisfied. And once that is there, if this condition is always satisfied, then we will always write xk as summation n equal to 0 n minus 1 xn e to the power minus j 2 pi kn. The minute I write xn in the definition of DFT, this is DFT. The minute I write xn instead of xpn, it is assumed that I'm taking n greater than equal to L. So for all practical purposes, I will not write this p. So if I define DFT in this form, you have to assume that the number of sampling points, which is capital N in frequency domain, it is either equal to or it is greater than the number of sample points that xn has. So this is something that you must, for the rest of the discussion on DFT that we have, is something which is automatically being satisfied. That is what DFT is. And this is an important concept that you must understand. If you are manipulating something in frequency domain, of course it has to have some implications in time domain. And when you actually sample DTFT, which is discrete time Fourier transform in frequency domain, what it actually means that your xn gets transformed to a signal which is xpn, which is nothing but a repetition of xn spaced to the left and right by the number of sampling points that you have used to discretize the frequency transform. I finished the lecture here. It was all theory, but it was heavy. I would want you to read these slides again and again so that you have a good understanding of what DFT is all about. But the basic crux of the matter is that we will use this definition of DFT. So today's lecture, and the lecture before this, was more of a conceptual understanding of what DFT is. And from now, I would assume that that conceptual understanding has, made some room in your head, and we will continue with this expression over here and study the properties of DFT and manipulations in DFT and so on and so forth. Right? So I'll see you tomorrow. We'll have a class. Tomorrow is what? Today is Thursday, right?
Yes, sir.
Actually, I've lost count of what is the date and what is the day. I'm just counting the number of controlled classes I've missed, and then the next class would obviously be DSP, something like this. Anyways, so then we meet for the lab class in which we are going to study DFT, and then we'll meet again at 2:30 again for the signal processing class. I want to really finish this thing so that we can move ahead and we can go to other topics of signal processing. Anyways, okay. So if there's no question, we can just end the class, and we'll meet tomorrow at 9. Okay. I would again just urge. I see only about 14-15 students coming. This is a class of almost 30 people. I do not know why they are not coming, but please, I request them. I'll also write on the group that they should come. These are important topics. And if you do not get a conceptual understanding now, it will be very difficult for you to use them later on. And signal processing, whether you are a computer science student or you are a electronic students or you are an electronic student wanting to work anywhere, DFT and signal processing concepts are important in any field. We study electromagnetics, we use DFT. We study machine learning, we use DFT there also. You know, you want to predict stocks, Fourier transforms are very valuable there, time series analysis everywhere. These are important concepts, and if people are missing classes and they just think that they can just pass the exam and that is enough, then that's their life. But if you really want to learn signal processing, you rather come to the class and attend it. Please convey my message to your friends and classmates. I'll write a message on the group. I would expect that more people join classes from tomorrow. Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.